on, Zoom. You can do it.
Recording in progress.
That's the thing we're waiting for. Waiting on Zoom to tell us it's recording in progress, and we certainly are doing that. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to The Broken Brain. Welcome. I'm Dwight, your host, of course, as we are diving into the intersection of psychology, culture, and social issues. Something very actually near and dear to my heart. As those who've listened to the show know, I used to work in an community agency. It was primarily focused around substance abuse, which actually in that gave us a lot of connection to the correctional system, to drug court, to mental health court, and also worked with the local the jail and those kind of provisions of mental health to those that are going through that experience. So this is something I'm really excited to talk about today. My guest is Oswald Newbold. He is a mediator, a social advocate, and the co-author of Breaking Chains, Building Futures, Pathways to Redemption, Education, and Excellence. And excited to get to know more about you and the work that you are doing. So, Oswald, thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you for having me, Dwight.
Well, I want to let you tell everybody a little bit about the work that you do. I'm really fascinated by the role that you've crafted for yourself in leadership and in helping people. So, how would you tell people about how you got into this work?
Oh, well, what brought me into my work, I always like to tell people I found purpose out of pain. And it's through my life journey that led me to the work that I do today. And to be more specific with it, I had contact with the justice system when I was a teenager. And that journey through the justice system, it molded. I saw the good and the bad in it. And that's what led me to the work I do today.
Great. Tell everybody maybe a little, if you would, a little about the specifics of how you bring your skills in to help.
Oh, so right now today, I work in the field of reentry, where we help men and women release from incarceration, whether they release from federal, state, or our local county jail. I'm in South Florida in Palm Beach County. And I do what I can, and our agency do what we can to help people with the reintegration process.
Absolutely. And I love how you open that up, where you're talking about that purpose out of pain. I've found that when you are going through the justice system, and maybe we'll talk about some of the pros and cons of that experience. I don't know about pros is the right way to say it, but it's a heavy system with lots of requirements. And the thing that I've always noticed, those are some of the coolest years in my career, is working with that and being really impressed with. Basically, if you can get through that successfully and excel within a system like that, and exit a system like that, when you finally, when people finally get to, you can do a lot. That is a lot of various skills that you have to perfect to go through that. And oftentimes, depending on which professionals you end up working with, sometimes not encouraging. Let's say it that way. Sometimes some are much better than others, and it's just it's so tough to get through. Did you? How did you find that you brought anything to it that, like, just kind of part of your personality that gave you any strengths to go through that process that tie in with what you're doing?
Well, I only been through the system one time, so I wasn't familiar with the justice system, jails or prisons. So I had to learn
the adult system, right? Yeah, different.
So I'm 19 years old, and I had to learn it on the fly. But my only goal was to make it through there. Sadly, I didn't have a death case, but I was sentenced to life in prison initially. Yeah. Oof. And I always tell people in Florida, they don't have a parole system. So when a judge gives you life, they essentially say you will leave prison in a pine box.
Yeah.
And so thankfully an appeal helped me out. But in the end, I still had to walk a long journey. And through that, I had to find my way through faith. I had to find my way letting go of bitterness. The system has a way of really just getting under your skin in some ways, but I had to outgrow that and realize that life is about choices. Life is about putting good energy into the universe, and it took growth over years, but that's just been part of my journey.
Yeah, that is It's a terrible feeling to have your freedom on debate is the thing. So, I mean, I imagine that must have been pretty awful
Yeah.
feeling.
I mean, it was actually, it was so heavy till you really couldn't think. I couldn't even process it all.
That makes sense.
Like,
I wouldn't know how to process
yeah,
that, right? Oh.
yeah,
Well, and when you say appeal, I don't know, for those who aren't familiar, that's not a next week, you know? I mean, I must have
no,
been a minute, because to me, a life sentence is like, it's not a sentence, but it is an end of, it's a potential end of the life you may have thought you were going for at that time. Right?
yes.
Yeah. Did you know at that point you were going to be focused on working with those that are doing reentry? Has that been an evolution? You've been a mediator for a while, right? According to
Yeah.
your bio. Yeah.
Yeah, since 2008. Actually, I became a mediator. That started while I was in prison. And what happened, I was at a facility and they was looking for a way for the prison population to be able to resolve conflict without resorting to violence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I took the training while in for that. And that's where it started for me. Now I do landlord tenant things, but it
Wow.
started from, I do landlord tenant
That's
now.
really, that's pretty important. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
What was that like getting started in that population when you were in the prison? What kind of things were? That's got to be a pretty specific, type of approach. I mean,
believe it or not, most of us are mediators on a daily basis, and we don't realize it. Sometimes you got to mediate conflict between your kids. You have to, or some people just getting a little hot, and you be like, "Hey, y'all, just cool out, man." I mean, we mediate the small things, but that's mediation in itself. So it came natural. It's just a matter of, and it's just understanding people just want their voice in life. That's why social media is so big. People may even get on social media and just say the wildest thing. They just want their voice to be heard. Right?
yeah, no, that's a good point. And
Yeah.
well, and that's a setting in which people can get, let's say, carried away, if they will, because and they always talk about there's a degree of safety there to say, like, I can say whatever I want. Nobody even necessarily knows who I am unless I decide to put my name correctly. Now, of course, in person and when you are dealing with that, that's a little different when people are, well, I don't know, different personality types when you come into it. When you are mediating, do you have to sort of assess, like, who am I working with here? Like how individualized does that have to be?
I don't do it like that. It's always about the issue with me.
Uh-huh.
And how do you embrace both parties? Because you have to be neutral and allow them to have their voice and allow them to give their position. And then once the facts or whatever is being placed out there, now we unpack it. Mm-hmm. So I've been pretty blessed in facilitating that, is give people their voice, make both sides feel empowered, and show how it could be a win-win for everybody. You're going to give up some things, but you also walk away with some things.
Yeah. The old joke, of course, is compromise means nobody gets what they want. But I have noticed that when you have somebody involved who understands, like, how do we make a win-win compromise? That's a whole different story, right?
Yeah, and that's what mediation is about, not making somebody win or lose. It's how do you walk away with a win-win that people comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then do you find that, what are some of the elements that make it difficult? How do you get people to focus on the issue? Because there's often, if they're getting to the point where they need you, there's probably a lot of emotion involved.
It is. And a lot of times the issue just be the end result. Many times it's not even the issue. It'd be other. That's why when I say you have to unpack it, it's like peeling the layers of an onion. You have to unpack it is because it be something more personal that's not being said, but you got this big issue, but it's really not the issue.
Yeah.
It's other things. That's why I say when it go back to people having their voice, them being able to express themselves, and the other side taking the time to hear them and receive it, and vice versa, that's really where it's at most time. Unless now it's kind of different when we dealing with property, but when it comes to most times with personal issues, it be really something personal. And sometimes people just want you to say, hey, I was wrong, I'm sorry. And it all cures some things.
Wow.
Yeah,
So that's like sort of the communication training, even just around the expression of regret or yeah, sorry about that. That's interesting. It goes a long way
yeah,
to sort of ameliorate the situation. Yeah.
it does. It
That's-
does. And being willing to forgive others. You know, sometimes we want to pin people down forever for the smallest of things, and just being willing to say, "Hey, it's not even worth us using all that negative energy in life for that something that small."
I find that with conflict, sometimes, and I guess, obviously depending on it, some people have an ongoing relationship post mediation. Some people don't, I'm sure. But sometimes when we are trying to resolve conflict, I mean, I think it's one of the opportunities we have to give ourselves kind of a gift and say, I don't have to have this fight anymore. That's the goal, right? Is to say, and oftentimes I think we almost get addicted to the fight we're having. Sort of. Does that make sense? Like, do you see that? Is it hard for people to let go of that righteous indignation or that fight that they're in?
I see that, and I understand exactly what you're saying. But for me, I think I always like to remember. I said both parties. I want them to be empowered.
Yeah.
So I be looking for both sides to take the higher road, to look at the higher side of themselves. We get away from the low. So it's about empowering both sides of it, because that's the only way you get to the win-win. You don't want somebody to feel like they won and somebody lost. So both sides have to feel empowered.
And also I see it's interesting, the similarities and differences when I've worked in the therapy side of things where we're working through some issues. And I've been really impressed with the mediation. People oftentimes go and handle that for some of those more, especially the practical realities of how are we going to make an agreement. And I think kind of the work in both of our fields hopefully complements each other if it's working the way it's supposed to, right? Get someone hopefully someone coming in a little more emotionally regulated probably helps with your, and I've had many times where people come in with practical solutions they got from mediation that sure makes my job easier.
You want to know what's the worst case to mediate, Dwight?
Yeah.
A divorce case where there's property and children involved. I mean, that's the ultimate toughest. It's now especially when both sides can't stand the ground that each other walk on right now. That is it's so much emotion. That is actually the most, for me, that's the most difficult case.
I could see that. Yeah. A lot of emotions there. And also people fall into this trap of feeling, you talk about the win-win, and unfortunately some people misinterpret the feeling of they're almost like, if the other person feels like they win, I'd rather lose something than have them feel like they won, and looking at that as a loss for them. Like instead of being like, those you put it, the goal is we both walk out of here feeling like, hey, we both got what we need and we both resolved it. Even just the resolution is a win if people are interested in having peace, right? Yeah. Huh.
But the divorce case, that's a tough one. That it be so emotionally charged. Somebody's going to feel like, unless they come to the table just wanting to resolve it without any issues, is one thing. But most times in those cases, somebody feel like they lost, and it's just tough.
Yeah. How do you going to approach that when you get something like that where the emotions are so high?
You have to unpack it, because it's something that both sides want to say to each other, or one side wants to say something and the other one don't want to talk. They just want to get it over with. So the one who has something to say, you have to go ahead and let them say it and get it there. Keep it under control, but it has to get out. Yeah.
With high conflict like that, do you do, a lot of times people do separate rooms, like I'll go talk to this person, I'll go talk to this person.
We could do a caucus.
Yeah.
You could do a caucus if it's like that. And I've been fortunate. I haven't had to do caucus too much in my mediation. Sometimes I do it, and when I do it, it's not because I have to. It's just certain things not to be discussed, especially if it's like money and somebody going to pay somebody. And I want to get a range. I'll do the caucus just to see where they at and see what
you do them separate. Then
do it separate. But for the most part, I kind of handle it right there. We handle it amongst that. You just have to be strong to regulate it. to keep
I
it
bet.
yeah, regulated, but it's good.
Well,
And the end, I feel like I helped people.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's amazingly helpful when especially with the divorce situation, I talk to people about that all the time, and my feedback to them is always like your emotions and your practical needs are both important, but they have overlap, but you really got to be careful not to try to meet your emotional needs through the practical resolutions, or trying to meet the practical things as in order to meet both directions is like basically saying like there are two projects, and if you go into a mediation, for example, and say I'm going to feel better after this about the outcome, and I'm gonna feel healed if I can win, then it's like you're not gonna bring good energy in, and you're gonna make the mediator's job that much harder to say, hey, I want you to be able to walk out feeling good about this aspect and this issue, but you got to process the emotional part and not view it as a way to get back at somebody, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. That is, that's obviously a lot of difficult things. You mentioned the housing representation as well. That's very important. I imagine nowadays. I imagine that also complements the reentry work to know a little bit about housing, right?
Right. And so with the housing, it's a program that's designed to prevent homelessness. And that's what the mediation is about. They could get in some cases, they could get rental assistance. Then it's sometime a tenant is going to have to go, and they willing to go, but they need time to find somewhere affordable they can go to. But the program is designed to keep people and families from ending up on the streets. So that's why I do like that mediating program.
Well, and people sometimes, if they haven't been up close to it, they don't realize that that kind of trouble can become just a spiral, because once somebody gets out on the street in a hopeless way, or even couch surfing, that version of homelessness or whatever it is, it becomes exponentially harder to get out of the situation than to. It's a lot. It saves us a lot of time and money as a society to help people stay away from that situation than it is to try to say. I mean, people don't think about it. If I'm living without a structure around me, obviously I'm susceptible to the elements and to crime and to victimization. But also, people don't think about this. It's hard to start trying to save up money if I have to buy food every meal. I don't have a fridge, right? And if I have to go to a laundromat or pay a truck stop to use a shower so I don't lose my job. And there are a lot of people who are still working that are homeless. People don't realize that sometimes.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's rough right now. I mean, compared to the amount of people in the United States right now versus how much housing is available, the demand is high and the supply is low.
And the cost, right, has skyrocketed the last several years. Yeah.
It has. It's skyrocketed.
Well, what kind of approach do you take to like the reentry type of work as well when you're helping people to reenter? How does your like skill set come into that, and what kind of practical things are you doing with them?
Well, it's two sides. One is I go inside of facilities and mentor with people that's coming home kind of soon, maybe like 3 years or less. So I go inside and start having that conversation up front in a mentoring class. It's a 12-week mentoring class we do, and we go over everything you might come across in life to prepare for those moments and to get their mind right, because everything starts with mindset. The way we view things is going to dictate our approach we take with it. So I help them out in that way. But from the actual service standpoint, we help with them getting basic needs such as clothes, finding transitional housing. It's like a halfway house situation, but that's better than being homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get them a telephone. We walk them through. We help them like try to find employment and just walk them through the steps of reintegrating in life. And we think the services is what help people, but it's really the mentorship, because people need more than services. They need somebody that believe in them.
Mm-hmm. Especially going through a system where I met so many people who would go into, like, let's say they go into the court, they get some kind of either sentence, or if they're a lot of people I've worked with are fortunate enough to get like a plea in abeyance where they say you got to plead guilty, but we won't punish you if you do a year of treatment or whatever, or we won't send you to the full. But so then already they're kind of turning over their rights to appeal or freedom or anything. And then I also noticed like they, on the way out or in an office with a probation person or whoever, they get handed, it's essentially handed a big old stack of things. It's like, here's all these flyers, here's a place to go for therapy, here's a thing to do, here's how you satisfy this, here's how you satisfy that. You got that? And everybody knows the right answer to you got that is yes, because I gotta get out of here. I'm already overwhelmed. I'm already like, I don't know what this shit is that they just gave me. I walk out and I go, I got to figure this out myself now. Right?
Yeah.
Because and not to say that there's not probation people out there that if you said, no, I don't get it, can you help me? Certainly I've met professionals that will say, yeah, I want you to succeed. And then there's others that are like, no, I'd rather you just leave. So, just any industry, you've got different quality of professionals. And so right away, yeah, I can see where like to have a mentor, to have somebody who's like, I got your back. Don't worry, we're going to figure this out. That's huge right away, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's helpful. And then there's so many things. If we talk about the criminal justice system, it's a money-making machine too.
Absolutely. It's a money-making machine. You should talk about that a little bit if you can.
Yeah, and people and everybody, justice is not justice for everybody. In much as I hate to say it, like it depends on what zip code you from would dictate how you're treated a lot of times. They will say, oh, it doesn't go by that. But guess what? If you have money and you're more affluent and you somebody from an area that's more economically challenged, them outcomes going to be different. They would say, oh, no, justice is equal, is done. No, it's not. It's sentencing disparities across the board.
And it's been amazing to me to see the inside of that sometimes, depending on the nature of the charge and depending on the market that you're in or whatever, but if you are in a position where you could, sometimes it's even a few $1,000s as a retainer. If you can scrape together that, you have a vastly different outcome than if you can't. And that, if people stop and think about that and say, if you're in a situation where it's like, I can hand a few $1,000s to a lawyer who, as soon as they walk in the room, I get treated different. Versus I can't afford that and I'm just on my own twisting out here, and that can be a difference of decades potentially, or years and years of one's life. That's a huge difference, It
is.
Yeah. If you can swing a down payment or a retainer for someone who has, frankly, I'll just say like the person who is a colleague of the prosecution and sees the judge and sees the court secretary and, every day, and it's a lot easier for them to look at that person and say, I'm inclined to give you more what you're asking me than I would just some person I'm never going to see again. Right.
That part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Choose people up. And I found disillusionment a lot of times is one of the biggest obstacles people have when they're trying to re-enter society, come out of a correctional experience. They're just disillusioned because of all the things you just said. It's not like they don't notice that they got treated different than the guy on the other side of town, right?
And we're dealing with, when you come out, because the label that they put on you, the felony, you're dealing with the stigma. You're dealing with all type of barriers to employment. You're dealing with being barriers to being able to you could have a job and could afford to rent an apartment, but because they run a background, they don't rent to you. So housing and employment is the two biggest challenges when a person comes out. And those are two of the most essential things in life, a place to lay your head and have an income to be able to survive.
And many times, if you have any kind of follow-up or probation or parole, if you don't have those things, you are breaking the rules.
You could get violated, a technical violation for those. Yes.
And as you put it, two things that sometimes people aren't inclined to give. It was interesting the first time I heard about, let's say the crime-free housing project. This is something, the first time I heard about it, someone's like, oh, it was I don't know if it's nationwide. I'm sure there's other allegorical, organizations or I should say process where if you're a landlord or you have rental properties, you can join this and opt in, but they require you to run background checks, obviously. And then they require you to say no to people in some instances where it's like, oh no, we're crime free. And it didn't take me more than a little short amount of time to go, oh, that's a form of, that can very easily turn into a form of discrimination. It's like, we're going to treat everybody the same, and so therefore it's unfair because not everybody's the same that's coming in.
Exactly.
You know? And then it's like, well, where do you expect people to thrive if they don't have a place to live except the place that doesn't? You get a place that's like, we don't even care to run background checks. They're probably not, you know. But to be involved in, I've gotten to know some places that are like, yeah, we'll do a background check, but then we'll have a conversation afterwards. Right. That to me is one of the biggest things. Now I'm curious, does the mediation come into that kind of stuff? Do you help people to navigate those kinds of conversations they can try to have, or?
Well, nobody usually comes with that issue. They in the grind of trying to find a place. They not stopping for anything like, and they'll never tell them, well, we're not renting to you because of the background. They're going to say, well, your credit score wasn't high enough. They're going to give you,
which is probably true coming out of incarceration, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But then some people that come out of incarceration actually have a pretty decent score, especially like somebody who hasn't been using credit and their credit not bad. They could build a pretty decent credit file real fast. So it's not even that all the time. It's really, they see the background and they say no, and they don't know. And then even the property managers may not know why they say no, but it comes down to insurance. The insurance people essentially ask, when you get in coverage, your general liability insurance and coverage, the insurance company is gonna ask, are you gonna rent to people who have a criminal background? As soon as you say yes, the insurance premium goes through the roof.
I see.
Yeah.
So then then addressing things on that societal level where it's like that's allowed to happen. Obviously so is that part of it? The societal work.
Society dictates the norms of things. Sadly, that's why criminal justice reform is needed to be able to push back on these. These things are systemic. It's not just one individual doing it. It's systemic. You'll run into that same barrier in most places. So it's going to take some shift in policy. Some shift. It's going to take shift in mindset, but people are people. Mm-hmm. And many times they hear that you've been convicted of something. You have innocent people get convicted.
Sure.
Look, in Florida, I'm going to show you how easy it is to go to prison in Florida. You get caught driving with a suspended license 3 times. If your license is suspended or revoked and you get stopped 3 times, that's 5 years in prison in Florida. They convict you of a felony and send you to prison for 5 years. That's just for traffic violations. 3 with a suspended license. That's how easy it is to become a convicted felon and go to prison. And just because you're going for traffic stuff, they're going to chain you on the bus it'll be the guy with the murder, the robbery, the rape, and they go you with your traffic tickets. They're going to shackle you all the same.
Yeah, it's the thing that, and I know where I live, and a lot of states have this, where if you get a couple of misdemeanors that are the right type or whatever, that they can then enhance to a felony. And like the city I live in, you can get a misdemeanor because if your dog gets out of your yard without a license on its collar, right? So, you know, what if you get someone who is on some, especially if they're on like a kind of plea in abeyance and then they rack up something like that, it happens where it's like, oh, that happened to you. Sorry. That's, once again, we're treating everybody the same. So if you get this many misdemeanors, even if one of them's your dog, then it's felony. And that changes potentially your life for potentially, forever. People don't know the system well enough sometimes to know what to do about that. And what's available. Well, tell people a little bit about the book that you're involved with Breaking Chains, Building Futures. What kind of stuff do you share in there?
Oh, thank you. I'm thankful to be a symbol. It's 13 co-authors in there, so it's some powerful stories in there. And actually, for me, I spoke about race and education in my chapter. and just showing how race can influence your educational journey. And for me, I was 6 years old, and my first grade teacher, she failed me. She gave me a bunch of bad grades on my report card, and I share it in the book. So I got all these bad grades. I go home. This is 1970. I'm in my 50s now. I got so many bad grades. I know my mama gonna give me a whooping. So I get out a typewriter and some whiteout, and I go to changing the
Sure.
grades. I'm 6 years old. I did it about as good as a 6-year-old could do it. I didn't let the whiteout dry. I put it on the typewriter.
Oh no.
A complete mess. And my mama barreled down on me about it. And I'm young, I didn't know. But what happened, my mom saw all of my schoolwork. When it got the principal, went out to the school, and what they went to asking. So my mama wanted to see where the bad grades was in the grade book that I got all these bad grades. Long story short, they had been having problems with the teacher, and they said that, okay, is my signal here?
I can still hear you. Just the picture
Okay.
went weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it went weird. Okay, sorry about that.
No, weird. It was actually went to your profile, which is a pretty damn good looking picture of you.
Okay, as long as you can still hear me, because something going on over here. Essentially, they just was having problems with the teacher, and they admitted that the teacher was prejudiced. And this was in the 1970s. And
Wow.
I'm 6 years old. I didn't even understand what that was. But what happened when I got the bad grades, and I did my work. I ended up getting bad grades. I ended up getting a spanking, and I was doing the right thing. My 6-year-old mind couldn't even wrap around what happened, but it started to disconnect me from education going forward.
Because you internalize, right? That's a great point. Before you know about all the different things at work, you internalize that. And to me, I don't know, if I'm a little kid with no resources and I'm trying to it sounds like you go right into survival mode. And survival mode, like our brain it's not going to make a real differentiation between here's the best long-term way to handle. It's like, I got to do something now. And you make decisions that actually, I mean, if you look at it from an inexperienced young point of view, it's like, this seems like a good idea. You know, if I can get away with it, then I don't have to get whooped, and there we go. And everything is fine. It doesn't really work that way, but it makes sense that it can incentivize dishonesty in kids when it's like, oh, this dishonesty might actually help me. Right. So you get that kind of disenfranchisement. And I feel like if we aren't talking about racial issues and we're not talking about education, we're not really talking about the issues here, right?
When we talk about race and education, I think every child deserves to get a quality education and to move on. And even when we look at it, different schools get different amounts of funding. It shouldn't be that way. Different schools get different skill set and quality level of teachers. But think about it, a child, they first 18 years of their life is going to be attached to the education system. And we can't get away from that. And they have this thing that is called the classroom to prison pipeline. And the classroom to prison pipeline, if you haven't heard about it, it's the third grade assessment the standardized test they give to third graders. It dictates how many prisons and jails and prisons they're going to build in the future. My problem with the class, because it's essentially saying if by the third grade, if you're not at a certain level, you're going to fall behind each year to the point you're going to drop out. Then after you drop out, it's believed that you'll turn to a life of crime to survive and you'll end up in jail or prison. Much as I hate to say it, the classroom to prison pipeline is actually true. Mm-hmm. My problem with the classroom to prison pipeline, if we could know how many jails and prison to build based off this third grade assessment test, we also know what that child needs to prevent them from ever ending up in that situation. And we're not focusing on that. So that's my issue.
Yeah, the fact that we even have a name for it, and that means, oh, let's predict outcomes, rather than, oh, that means we can actually identify the kids who are at risk of needing that. And I think we like to, as a society, anybody who can, oftentimes there's an incentive to ignore and just say, yeah, everything's fair. And even if the people admit that everything's not fair, people like to act like it's all about money and lower income area versus higher. That does play a big role. But also there's there's unquestionably racial elements. Like you take a geographic area with a higher population of Black Americans, it definitely gets different funding that is not proportionate to just the income.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we act like race doesn't play a factor in things in life, but any mature adult know that race plays a factor. Not saying that it's right, but we all, any real adult knows that it is. But I think the problem with us, we should be looking into humanity. It's not about race. It's not
Absolutely,
about,
from a solution standpoint, right?
yeah, it's not about race. It's just about being human and being able to enjoy life, have your family live. We all can live together. But too often it turns into a competition, and a lot of times it turns into hatred. And that's not good. I seek a happy life myself. And and for me, and I always say that, like, zip codes, I feel that zip codes are nothing but labels.
Hmm.
It's nothing but labels.
That's a good way. I like the use of that. You mentioned that earlier, the use of zip codes as a way to conceptualize this. Yeah.
Yeah, zip codes. I mean, they try to say it, but zip codes is everything. You think about the war, like World War, back in the World Wars, Vietnam War. You never heard anybody from Hollywood say they lost a child in those wars. They never said their child got drafted.
Mm-hmm.
Certain zip codes, they might not come off the registry, but certain zip codes get pushed all the way to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just say that when you look at those things, they're unquestionably, there's numbers you can see, right? And then there's just lived experience. You know, my brother-in-law is Guatemalan, and especially right after 9/11, when they were I'm doing air quotes around the microphone for anyone just listening to audio, random searches in airports. He got randomly selected a lot, and it was obvious that people thought he was Middle Eastern, like, because of just the tone of his skin could make him pass for Middle Eastern. And so he got picked for random almost every time he flew. So we say random ain't so random sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And then you look at it when we have whole neighborhoods, and we don't have to get in redlining and everything like that, I guess. But there's reasons neighborhoods and zip codes were crafted for people that are like, oh, you got to go live over here. And so there's so many things that are kind of stacked. Then when someone's coming out, sometimes coming out of a correction, they're not used to even before getting involved in anything criminal justice oriented. A lot of times there's already an attitude of like, well, nobody wants to help me. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. So people become targeted just because they're going back just to how their skin looked, how they thought he was Middle Eastern and he was Central American.
Right.
Central America, and it happens. And just going back to the conversation we was having about zip codes, marginalized communities, poverty and crime are deeply connected, especially in the marginalized communities where the economic opportunities are limited. Mm-hmm. And that comes down to the school system, underfunded schools, over policing. They even, I was working with an organization where there's a particular place in the state. I'm not going to even just say them right now, but the county, 90% of the county jail was from one zip code.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it came from over policing. If you're looking for something in a certain area, you're going to find it. But people are doing the same thing in other areas, but you're not over there bothering with them.
Oh, that's, yeah. If you live and let's say, that zip code, you can go to certain zip codes where unless you call them, you don't see any cops driving around. Yeah.
No, they're not patrolling the streets like that. They up the patrol cars in certain areas.
Yeah. And then it becomes this like self-fulfilling prophecy cycle that you see there.
Yes.
Well, and it unquestionably, when there is economic infusion, and I've had guests on that talk about how, even entrepreneurship, if you are able to level some of the playing field, those areas absolutely rebound, right? And so when people want to say that they want to attribute some of the reasons, it's like, we know what helps. It's just that we want to do it, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
And I personally, I don't know if people can love or hate this, but I personally, love or hate that they did this. I'm not an economist. I don't know. But during COVID, when all of a sudden within a week, I felt like there was a decision to, hey, we're going to give 1,000 or two to everybody in America. It's like, okay, so we can do what we want to do, right? We just don't want to do some of the social program. That's what I've interpreted that, especially ever since. I was already a believer that we could reallocate things, but when they're just like, yeah, we're just going to do that and try to, as a way to try to help, boom. The fact that we could just do that and very quickly, it's like we could be paying for things. We could be actually helping some of these problems if we really wanted to, right?
Dwight, the go with what you're talking about now, I'm a firm believer that people economically benefit from the brokenness and the hardships of others. Like we look at the negative a lot. That's like I was talking about with the classroom to prison pipeline. You know what it could take to prevent that child from ending up in jail or prison, but you notice here we'll rather build a jail or prison. The same thing, I look at recidivism when people go back to jail. Let's just give a hypothetical number. Let's say 6 out of 10 people go back to jail. They honker in on the 6 people to justify creating harsher laws, building more jails and prisons and everything. The downside, and what I hate, is we looking at the negative. We've been tracking the negative for decades and it's still the same. Mm-hmm. The problem with me is, why don't we look at what the 4 are doing that kept them out and reduplicate that to help right there? But we never had a conversation on the pot. The conversations is always on the negative because we benefit from other people's hardships and brokenness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And is it still, I mean, and it's been a while since I've keyed into current research, but I know that when whenever I have read any that education provided within a correctional institution is the number one, like unquestionably number one thing, at least it was for years and years, that kept people away from recidivism. And so we know that education helps. I guess it's almost one of those like, oh, of course it does. But research has bound that out, I think. And that's at least what I've been aware of, is that's like
education does play a role. They have data out there that shows where every grade level that your education goes up, your chances for recidivism reduces by 3%. Huh. So if you're on a eighth grade level, even though you're adult, if you get it to get your academics up to 9th grade, every grade level that your education level rises, your chance for recidivism decreases by 3%. They got data out on that. Yeah. And that's big because the more educated you become, you start to look at things differently. Other opportunities start to come up. So it actually correlates. Many people don't realize that, but education is not a cure-all solution, but it does help in giving you more opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a social component to that too, because people, if you do get into a situation where you can talk to somebody, you know, there's about housing or job, especially job interview, I think that it helps to demonstrate. It's hard. You can say I've learned a lot, and it can be, you know, obviously very, very true. But then to say like, hey, I got this degree, you know, meanwhile, that proves sort of it shows it's a tangible thing. People can say, oh, well, you made use of your time inside. And I think it wins people over. And unfortunately, people don't always give a chance to someone who's like, yeah, I didn't have a program where I was, but here's what I did, you know, to improve myself and be ready for this. So yeah, it's just such a hard thing to break out of. And for people who don't understand that, you should. And books like this and Google exists. So anybody, I think to a certain extent nowadays, if we don't know something, it's partially because we don't want to know it, if that makes sense. So that's just something I'd encourage people to say, even when it boils down to like, who do you want to move in next door to you? Are you an advocate for someone to move in and have a chance at something? Or are you an advocate to say, I don't want anybody who makes me uncomfortable to ever live near me, and I don't want to educate myself? You know, you can tell that was sort of an unflattering impression I did of that person.
And one of the things about life, if you don't really know a person, you don't know what their journey has been. You know, a lot of times we cry, you don't know who is who and what they've been through, you know. So It's just sometimes we have hangups just because society has normalized that as a hangup.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and I've noticed that when I worked with residential treatment quite a bit, we would see this where when someone would come in and say, "Let's build a treatment center for youth." I work mostly in youth treatment, and say, "Let's put it here." You'd always get people in the neighborhood like, "We don't want a bunch of kids who have problems here." And the funny thing to me was always like, so you don't want a place where you know that there's kids that are getting help and also, let's say, heavy supervision too, that there's supervision and help, but you don't worry about the kid down the street who you don't know what that guy's doing, but he's doing something. You know what I mean? It's like we want to turn an eye or even just say like, oh, well, try hard with your kid. And nobody's maybe knowing what some of the things that are going on that they don't know about. And we pretend to, we're comfortable with that. So, but actually engaging with people who are seeking help and things. And I like how you put it. Really, it sounds to me like that communication and listening to people, those are a lot of things. So I can see where you bring a lot to the table with mediation and communication.
Yeah. And the first part of the first thing they teach you in mediation is listening skills. Mm-hmm. Listening is that's the first component. If you won't be able to successfully help mediate if you haven't listened to what the parties are saying.
Right. Yeah. You think of it, it makes so much sense, but then we often don't apply it because we come with preconceived notions,
Yeah. And that's something too. You have to be able to be unbiased, just like hear it for what it is.
Well, I want to let everybody know this is something we could go about this all day. And I would actually love that if we could, but since we can't, I want to let everybody know where they can follow your work and if there's a better place or a worser place to get the book or anything. Before I ask that, I always like to give everybody a chance to share with the audience if there's anything that they would recommend as a way of giving back to the community. Oftentimes that's a nonprofit or a charity. It can be related to what we're talking about, but it doesn't have to be. Is there anything you would tell everybody about that's something that's important to you?
Well, for me, I'm actually involved in criminal justice reform and conflict mediation. Those like the two big areas for me. And I recently, my nonprofit, Libra Life Mentoring Services, Libra Life Mentoring Services. Actually, I was mentoring youth, males was the focus, but recently I pivoted and now I mentor youth that has an incarcerated or formerly incarcerated parent because they have a different set. Yeah, so I focus on that, male and female. I even have women that have lived experience to help with the girls, but I focus Libra Life Mentoring Services. We focus on mentoring youth that has an incarcerated, formerly incarcerated parent. And then Libra Life International, that's why I do the criminal justice reform work right there. So through another arm of the nonprofit. And you can find it online, LibraLifeMentoringServices.com. Mm-hmm. It's Libra Life Mentoring. Actually, it's LibraLifeMentoring.com online. And then when it conflict mediation, you can find me by my name, OswaldNewbold.com.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. And once again, the book is Breaking Chains, Building Futures, Pathways to Redemption, Education, and Excellence. And then as you put it, OswaldNewbold.com to follow you. Oswald, I'm really, really grateful for you to take the time today, but I also want to thank you for the work you're doing and for contributing to this, not only the book, but the organizations and the help that you're giving to people. So thank you very much for that.
And thank you. And I don't know what was going on with my camera, but I'm glad my profile picture looked halfway decent.
Hey,
but
more than halfway. You got, well, James Bond over here. You're looking good.
All right. So take care, Dwight. Keep doing what you're doing with touching lives and touching hearts, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You too.
All right, then.
Thank you for listening to the Court Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Court Arts shows, visit courtemparts.com.